Eastern Europe. There's almost no region where wildlife exists in its pristine condition. At the current time, there are specially protected national territories. The habitat complex where scientists are still exploring new species is located in southern Ukraine, Veliki Luk National Park. Up to this time, there were no surveys that have been carried out. For the first time, our cameramen have been invited on a special monitoring expedition. The national park is located in the Napier River Terrace, to the south of a major industrial city, Zaporozhye. In the springtime, in the forest land of the Napier, dry creeks offer a nesting place for many kinds of birds. The forest land of the national park is located close to the shore. Water snakes find ample shelter here. There is an abundance of small fish in the river, which are an easy catch and then eaten on the shore. There are also the areas of a special planning control on the grounds of the national park. Access to these areas is only allowed to biologists, and only for a short period of time. The Kuchaguri Islands. The scientific expedition to these islands are launched once or twice a year and last from 4 to 5 days. Consequently, the scientific data is collected with a minimal impact on the ecosystem. This unique climate condition and the lack of human impact on the environment has kept these areas in pristine condition. In May, after dusk, the European pond turtle makes her nest. Egg laying usually occurs in a pit, scraped out with the hind legs near the pond it inhabits. During the season, the female can lay eggs up to 3 times, laying from 3 to 19 eggs each time. After hatching, most of the young animals burrow deep in the sand and spend the winter there. The young turtles will begin their active life the following spring. And the most prevalent nesting birds here are the European cormorant. Until the middle of the 20th century, its population was limited. At the present time, there are about 3,000 individuals. The cormorants formed a great colony in the central part of the archipelago. Although they prefer to settle on old dry trees, they still are a major influence on the tree-shrub complex. A degradation of the vegetation cover has been observed at the sites where the birds gather in large numbers. Thickets of hops and frost grapes have formed in some areas, forming an impenetrable living wall. The Argiope brunici, or wasp spider, form their cannon nets. The colony boundary of the European cormorant is clearly visible by the dry trees. They often fly in organized groups, swim well, dive, and catch fish. After long periods of observation in the national park, the colony of the European cormorants has shown itself to be stable, and it almost never changes its boundaries. Thanks to the trapping and banding of birds from the colony, scientists know that they spend the winter in and near Israel. Almost all the banks of the islands are well fortified with reeds. Brushwood, mostly water hickory shown here, serves as a feeding ground for wading birds. Some of them weave their nests and never fly far from them. Most of the local water plants are listed in the Red Data Book. For some bird species, they serve as a reliable base and material for the construction of their nests. Some distance from the archipelago is a separate yet important location, Gucini Island. The island's land area is about 1.5 hectares, or about 3 acres. It can be called an outdoor biological laboratory. It is the gathering point for the largest number of bird species. According to observations over the last few years, there are 61 species of nesting birds in this one small area. All the nesting birds on the island have settled in their own separate groups and coexist peacefully with the other species. A colony of Cichoniaformes occupy the middle part of the island. They weave their nests on the shrubs at heights up to 1.5 meters. In spring, all the birds are colored in their best wedding attire and look especially beautiful. Several species of herons are weaving their nests on the Gucini Island. Night herons come and show up in April and immediately begin weaving their nests and laying eggs. By the end of May, they've begun a new generation of birds. At dawn, the nestlings of the night herons are trying to climb to the sunlit part of the nest, warming themselves after a cold night. These young birds are very curious about the camera and the cameraman. In the eastern part of the archipelago, there is a small island with almost impassable vegetation. Like Gucini Island, it has its own unique characteristics. Depending on the number and species of birds, each island has its own unique sounds. The nestlings of the night herons designate their location with their own distinctive sounds. The yellow-legged gull is a dominant species of nesting bird on the Gucini Island. This is the gull's natural breeding grounds. Over the years, it has been the home of 60 to 80 breeding birds. The yellow-legged gull begins to weave their nests at the end of February. They first lay eggs in the highest open area on the island. Later, the lowland area in reeds is also populated. During a visit to Gucini Island, in the first few minutes it seems that gulls are everywhere. But a critical observer will quickly notice that the structure of the colony has some specific boundaries for each species. Here, everything is in perfect harmony. So this is what the ecosystem without human interference looks like. The yellow-legged gull is a sociable species. If you keep an eye on the colony, it becomes apparent that the birds interact with each other as a society. The maturing young birds come into the organized groups and grow up together. The nestlings are looked after by the so-called nannies, while the most adult birds procure food. An open area of the sandy island with a sandy beach on the shoreline is not occupied by nests, except the gulls. It is almost never used by other species. In the middle of June, birds leave the island. There are no equivalent ecosystems like this in the Ukraine today. This is a unique habitat, which exists due to its geographic location and its vast distance from the mainland. The shallow reservoir in the spring warms up very quickly, and the nesting period begins here, 2 weeks earlier than on the mainland of the park. The young white heron move playfully along the branches of the older bushes. The next generation that was born later does not leave its nests. The Gucini Island, within such a small area, is the only self-sufficient and unique ecosystem in the world. Population growth on our planet gradually displaces wildlife. 30 kilometers north of the archipelago, there's a large industrial city, upstream of the Napier. The shoreline is heavily populated. Large-scale agricultural activities are conducted in this region, which naturally affects the flora and fauna of the river. It seems that the very existence of this habitat is impossible, with so many human factors impacting it. But the scientific expeditions of recent years have documented the population growth of these endangered species. The plant life on Kuchiguri Island is stable, and here it is still possible to find and discover never-before-seen species. A small island in the eastern part of the archipelago is completely inhabited by several species of herons. There are no gulls here, and at night, herons dominate the colony. Once again, we are surrounded by new and different sounds. Generally, night herons are active in the morning and evenings, and in the afternoon, they almost never leave the colony, communicating with each other and basking in the sun. They feed like all the Cichiniiformes, mostly on fishes, frogs, and water insects. These birds winter in equatorial Africa. The night herons are not bothered by human presence in their colony. They even seem curious. While the pond heron are shy and cautious. In order to shoot this species in their natural habitat, we must install microphones and cameras. It was necessary to arrive at the location before dawn. This species is listed in the Red Data Book of Rare Animals. During the mating season, these birds are especially beautiful. Like most of the herons and bitterns, they fly to winter in Central Africa. The pond herons nest in small colonies in the neighborhood with all the other Cichiniiformes. Usually, they lay 4 or 5 eggs to a nest. Generally, the females care for the eggs. The pond herons may truly be called one of the most beautiful birds in Eastern Europe. The little heron deserves special attention among all the inhabitants of the Gracini Island. This is the biggest colony in the region and has only 8 breeding pairs. Colonies of the little heron are now all over the northern Black Sea region. At one time, they could be found near human settlements, but now this bird is very shy. The hatchlings are gangly and covered with white flockus. They coexist peacefully with other species. The whole fauna of Gracini Island is very friendly. Conflict between species has never been observed here. Various scientists come to the conclusion that this is due to the lack of contact with humans. With the beginning of autumn, the islands become quiet. The vast majority of birds fly south for the winter. Just a few species stay behind. Autumn frosts arrive here 2 weeks later than on the continental part of the national park. The warm waters of the Napier allow the archipelago to remain warm through the winter. Some endemic plant species have adapted to the local climate, but all attempts to reproduce them on the mainland have failed. Scientific observations are taken in this area every autumn. Northern species of birds use the islands to prepare themselves for their migration onward. It is necessary to capture the birds, collect data on their health condition, describe it in detail, and then set them free again. This representative of the Chiroptera showed an interest in the group of scientists and slept all day under the tent. This is the Kuhl's pipistrelle. For several years, this species was thought to be extinct. An increase in its population has been observed recently. The only predators on the island are a small species of canine. Known for their distinctive appearance, they are called the raccoon dog, also known as the mangot. In the middle of the 20th century, 10,000 of these canid were brought from the Far East to Eastern Europe. Thereafter, their numbers have increased, and now they are common to the region. Raccoon dogs are the only canids known to hibernate. On the islands for many generations, these animals have not been in contact with humans and walk around their territories carefree. These animals were filmed openly, without the use of any camouflage. On the mainland of the park, they avoid human contact. However, in this region, they have a burning curiosity. The scientific group had to watch their step, not to disturb the animals sleeping on the path. These territories are priceless treasures of Eastern Europe. The ecosystem is self-sustaining, and any human intervention could damage the flora and fauna of the archipelago. In this limited area, each species occupies its own place. We can observe this animal world, but we should never become a part of it. Even Darwin, during his explorations of the Cologne archipelago, concluded that the fearfulness of birds is a learned trait. And if, with the passage of time, humans did not harm them, birds would have no fear of humans. The entire biosphere of the national park is especially valuable for our current generation and generations that follow. In southeast Ukraine, where the human population is dense and ever encroaches on the surrounding wildlife habitat, the park has become an oasis and a preserve to a vast variety of nature's gifts. The Napier and Veliki Look, with its unique landscapes and pristine habitats, has become the natural refuge of the Lower Napier.